What to grow in August. 5 great plants that I think you absolutely need to grow. Not just edibles, not just flowers, and not just seeds, so that over time you can easily build up your own collection of just great plants. Things that will be like a capsule wardrobe for your garden. Plants that are going to give you delicious food, colour and flowers and scent to make you really happy. And most of all, fill your garden all year round. Hey everyone, how's it going? And welcome back. I get asked all the time for my recommendations for, say, something that looks great in late summer or a brilliant plant to give someone as a present. So today I've handpicked 5 truly brilliant plants to grow this month. And as ever, it's not just me and my own suggestions, so make sure to stick around through the episode to see who else is helping me today. Right, time for the first plant for August. I've been waiting for months, truly waiting for months, to share with you the first plant in today's episode because it's one of my absolute faves and it's right here next to me. Allium Sveracephalon. What a name, what a plant. And the reason that I picked August to recommend them, well, they're not something actually that you want to be planting now, but they are something that really looks great now. This is when they're flowering their best. And actually, this is the time also to start gearing yourself up to order the bulbs next month or over the next month or two. I love alliums for their drumstick shape and those perfect purple globe flowers. There is a reason that they're so popular in people's gardens and in garden designs. But I've got a few reasons of my own why I particularly value this specific allium. Check out the flowers. I adore the shape of these because rather than those big spheres, these are little egg-shaped flowers that sit only about 2 to 3 feet off the ground. They're a little bit less showy than a standard allium, but for me, I think they're a lot more beautiful. When they're about to open, they're green. As they open, they have this mix of green blending into purple, and then when they're open, they're this intense maroon, burgundy purple shade. You can see that it's got really narrow, thin stems and a really narrow, thin form that makes it ideal for interplanting amongst almost anything. And you get these lovely little pom-pom heads of flowers drifting above whatever they're planted amongst. But what sets these out apart from all the other alliums in the allium world is that they're one of the latest flowering varieties. Rather than late spring, these are only coming into their real flower now here in Ireland. And when they do start to flower, the flower lasts and lasts. On a practical note as well, the bulbs are super affordable and you can buy them by the 100. And trust me, if you're going to buy these, buy them by the 100 and plant really big clumps because they just look insanely good in really any situation when they're planted en masse. Even here, I think that mine are planted just that little bit too sparsely, but just have one more look at these lovely flower heads and imagine them in your own garden. You know they're going to be amazing. They're going to be amazing. Hey everyone, really quick one from me. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and most importantly, hit that notification bell. It really does help to support my channel. And of course, it lets you know when my new videos are released each week. Right, back to the plants. Hello from amongst the grasses. This specific grass is called Calamograstus Karl Forster. Don't worry, by the way, about writing down the name of this or actually any plant that I'm talking about today. You can head across to my website, niallgardens.com, to get the plant list for everything featured today. August, or in fact the late summer, is when grasses reach their zenith. Quite literally, tall, graceful and in flower, and that's why I want to recommend this plant for right now. Now is the perfect time to go and purchase a grass because they're going to be closest to their mature form. so that you can get an idea of exactly how they're going to fit into your own garden. And let's face it, it gives you instant gratification when you just plonk it into your garden and it looks this impressive. So often when it comes to planting, I think that verticality gets forgotten. And if you easily want to add some of that punch to your planting, go out and get an architectural looking grass like this. Carl Forster, as you can see, grows properly tall. It's as tall as me, but you can see that it's not a big block of a plant like a shrub. It's actually really light and airy. These flower heads are just so graceful on a breezy day like this, and they add real movement to the garden, or even a planter. The other advantage of this specific plant, Carl Forster, I'm talking about it like this plant is a person because of the name, is that this plant is sterile. So many grasses are going to spread like wildfire, which isn't always desirable to say the least. Since this plant is sterile, it does mean that you're going to have to buy more plants if you want to get going, but it also means that you don't need to have the worry about self-seeding issues because it's not going to produce viable seed that will germinate around your garden. And over time, you can of course lift and divide each of these clumps. I think this is a particularly special grass to choose, and it's easily found in garden centres, really at quite a reasonable price. So have a look around the place and see if there's room in your own garden or balcony or container for a really beautiful grass. Just like this. I think your growing space needs it, and you need it in your life. I always like having at least one tasty crop to suggest to you each month. And that's because for me, having that mix of both edibles and ornamentals, that's what makes really the garden magic. So with a super easy edible to get sowing right now, it's Liz Zorab.
I highly recommend growing chard, even if you don't have a vegetable garden. If you choose one of the colourful varieties like Bright Lights or 5-colour chard, you can end up with pinks, orange, greens, reds, and then very, very deep red and a very vivid yellow. And the bit that's colourful is the stem and these little plants. Let me put them down. There's little plants which are so easy to grow from seed, and they turn into very lush, shiny leafed plants, and they'll sit in your garden right through the winter, and then next year in spring they start to go to flower, and this is where I think they get really interesting. If you have the space to leave them in your garden, they are so worth it. You get this very ornate, kind of twisty, gnarly stem with a kind of insignificant flower on the top of it, but having those colourful stems making a huge, bold statement in your garden at a time of year when the garden is really only just getting going, such a bonus. And it's worth noting that once they really start growing to form flowers and seeds, they can get enormous. So they can be as tall as a person and they can be really wide. So give them plenty of room. And if you do want to grow it as a vegetable, you can eat the baby leaves in salad. You can eat the older leaves wilted in a pan or cooked as a side dish. You can add them to stir fries. And if you're like me and you're not hugely keen on the taste of the leaves, I remove the leaf and just have the stalk. I chop it up and I add it to a tray of roasted vegetables with lots of garlic. It adds a slightly earthy taste to your dish. Just delicious.
Proof that I really do practice what I preach. Right here, I have already got all of my chard sown, and look, you can see all the little seedlings come up. I mainly use charred baby leaves for salads, so many of them sadly don't get to fulfill their final purpose of becoming big plants, but it is so worth it. Now, on to my next plant, which is a proper investment piece. If you've watched an episode from this series before, you'll know that I really like to suggest a whole range of plants. Some that are going to be cheap or easy to grow from seed for you, but at the same time the occasional slightly more expensive purchase that I like to refer to as an investment piece. Maybe something like a special shrub or a tree. Well, this investment piece for August is an Agapanthus. And the reason I think of it as an investment piece is because they're actually slightly more pricey than a regular plant in the garden centre. This cost me about €14, but come on, tell me that this is not worth it. These beautiful purple starburst flowers come in a whole range of colours. This one is quite a true blue colour really, but you can also get whites, dark purples, and even the occasional pink. For me, and I may be alone in this, I think their flowers actually look best when they're not actually in flower. Honestly, I think that they're especially lovely when they're like this, when the buds are well developed and ready to pop, but just not quite. I think that looks brilliant. This specific Agapanthus that I have here is called Africanus Blue, and it's the ideal size for a pot or a container. In fact, any Agapanthus is going to look great in a container. Everyone buys Agapanthus plants for their flowers. So a common question that I would hear asked is, why is it not flowering? Well, funny enough, these plants actually prefer to have their roots quite restricted, and that, along with good feeding, drives them into flowering. So keeping them quite confined in a pot like this is going to work well. Don't pop them on too quick. They also do need that extra little bit of care and attention than other plants. Unless you live in a warmer climate than I do, it's worth checking the specific hardiness of the specific Agapanthus that you have. And as a precaution, and it's easy enough since they're in pots, is bring the pots indoors into a nice covered growing area to keep them frost-free and away from the worst of the winter weather. But just take a moment to appreciate these flowers. To me, they invoke thoughts of a hot climate, a sunny place, and bringing that into your garden is always a great thing to do. Also, did you spot the bee on it a moment ago? The insects love it too. My final plant for August is something that looks really beautiful, but is tough, tough, tough. Crocosmia, and I've had it here growing in my own garden for a few years now, and I love it. Did you notice a few minutes ago that in the clips of the Agapanthus flowers, there were actually these really lovely pops of orange? That was exactly this. It was Crocosmia, and it shows you just how well this plant works to give that really big hit of colour in amongst all sorts of other things. It is a really beautiful companion to so many different colours, forms, and flowers. And depending on where in the world you live, you will probably recognise this by seeing it growing in the wild along the sides of roads, still known as Montbretia, normally in orange and normally in huge drifts. Because the flowers sit really tall on these long, slender stems that hang outwards, they're a great plant to plant in amongst other things. Plus, they are really forgiving in terms of the conditions they grow in. They come in a whole range of colours. This one is a fiery red. This is Crocosmia lucifer. But you can also get oranges, yellows, and all of the shades in between. And when you want more, they're really easy to lift and divide, giving you extra clumps that you can dot all around your garden. If you look closely, each flower is a really long trumpet shape, and more flowers open over time along these, well, essentially what is like a flower head. Pollinators and bees love them too. So if you're looking for a zero fuss, affordable, easy to get hold of, easy to divide plant that's going to give you really good and long-lasting late summer colour, look no further than Crocosmia. Before you go, sowing and planting times vary from region to region, so do remember to look up and really understand your own local growing conditions and also your last frost date, because they could well be different to here. Last month's suggestions from me in this video are still great if you're growing early this month or if you're in a colder area than me. And next month's video is perfect if you want to start thinking ahead and get a head start. And until next time, see you later.